fellow bookworms to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and I have another ABC Author Challenge video for you guys. I'm so happy I'm finally moving right along through these books, especially since I did get stalled on my F author. But today we are going to be talking about Anne Hillerman's Rock with Wings. I was so excited to read this, and in a way it kind of let me down a little bit, but in a way it didn't. And so I'm really excited to talk about this one. Of course, before we get into it though, please go ahead and give this video a like. It really does help out the channel. And then don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification if you haven't already so you don't miss out on a thing. But I'm going to kind of go over the premise of the book, then I'll go over the CAWPILE rating. As always, if you're interested in the CAWPILE rating system, the original creator's channel is linked down below, so definitely check that out. And then I'll kind of go talk about the book as a whole more in depth. So the overall premise is this was actually a series started by her father, Tony Hillerman, and it's a Leaphorn and Chi series. So you have Lieutenant Leaphorn and Detective Chi. This particular one is Detective Chi and his wife, Bernadette Manuelito, who is also an officer, and they are with the Navajo Nation. And so it's, like I said, a southwestern detective novel, and they kind of go on vacation, which gets cut short. He ends up staying where they were vacationing at. He kind of got volunteered to help out with the police department up there. There is a movie being shot up there, so he's up there, and then Manuelito ends up having to go home, and she goes back to work at home and is working on a case at home. And so it kind of takes place in the Four Corners area. They live in New Mexico. I couldn't get a really clear reading whether they lived in Shiprock or Farmington, but kind of the same area there. I think they live in Farmington, and her mom lives in Shiprock, and her case kind of takes place closer to Shiprock. And then Chi is up in Monument Valley and working on stuff up there, and he actually ends up getting a case up there as well. And Detective or Lieutenant Leaphorn does come into play in this book as well. So, but let's go ahead and go over my CAWPILE rating, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the book as a whole. The lowest score I gave was for characters, and that was a 7, which is still pretty good. And I think my issues with the characters, I didn't really get a good sense of the characters. And I think there's two reasons for that. One, this book is part of a series. And so the characters have already been established in previous books. So I don't think she went as in depth into their, personalities and such as maybe what happens in the beginning of the series. I don't know for sure. And keep in mind, the beginning of the series is her father writing too. So you have different writers as well, which I haven't read anything by her father. I do have one book that I am planning on reading as part of my 25 days of Bookmas books. So I think that's part of it, is I'm just coming in late to the game. And part of it is there is a little bit of a cultural difference. So the way they speak and such, it kind of made it hard for me to get a sense of them as well. So atmosphere though, I gave a 10. I love the atmosphere. I live in New Mexico. I'm in southern New Mexico. It takes place in northern New Mexico, but she captured New Mexico to a T, and I thought she really captured kind of the cultural nature of the Native Americans and everything as well. And so I really enjoyed the atmosphere. I thought it was perfect. And writing, I gave an 8. Kind of when it is a mystery, and so when she was kind of tying things up, uh she didn't fully explain things, and again there wasn't that depth to the characters. There were some things that didn't really make sense to me, and it felt like a little forced. So that's why writing gave an 8. I gave it 8, but I still really enjoyed it. Plot, I also gave it 8, kind of for the same reasons, just how things tied together, and they weren't fully explained, and then other things felt forced. Intrigue, I gave a 9. I was really intrigued, especially on Detective Manuelito's case, because they're both working on two separate cases. I was particularly intrigued with her case, and trying to figure out what was going on there. So, Logic, I gave an 8. Again, some of the things kind of felt forced, and the way things tied together didn't make sense to me. And enjoyment, though, I gave a 10. Even with those issues, I still really enjoyed this book, and I think it's because of the atmosphere, for me, and I think if I got to know these characters through the other books a little bit better, and had a better sense of them, I would enjoy those a lot more, and so, yeah, enjoyment, a 10 out of a 10, even with the issues, I still really enjoyed the book. So average rating is 8.57, which does equal a 4-star rating. It's just shy of 5 stars. 5 stars is 9 to 10. So it's just shy of that at a 4-star rating, but still a very, very solid book. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now. Um, I'm not going to give spoilers, obviously. Definitely, a mystery you want to go in without those. But basically, you have Chi and Manueletto, they go on vacation. But there is a very strong tie between Manueletto and her family, her mom and her sister. And so she ends up getting called back home. And so she goes back to work at home as well, and gets right back to it and ends up picking up this case. And then you have Chi, who ends up, he was already going to be working with the police up where they were vacationing. He had already kind of been volunteered for that, so he ends up staying on to fulfill that obligation essentially, and he's helping his cousin. His cousin is starting like a tour business, so he's helping his cousin with that as well, or his clan brother. I think they said cousin though, but he refers to him as his clan brother too. So you do have that Navajo footprint throughout the book, and I don't know a whole lot about the Navajo culture, but I thought she did a good job capturing it. And I will say, when I go up and visit my mom, the Native American footprint up there is very strong. And so it did make a lot of sense. The solar industry plays a big part in this book, as does the movie industry. Those are components to each of their cases. And again, I don't know a whole lot about the movie industry, but I could vividly picture it how she was describing it, and it seemed to make sense to me. And that is actually becoming a big thing in New Mexico as well. My brother or stepbrother actually works in the movie industry, and then also the solar industry is kind of really taking off, um, too. So my husband actually works in the solar industry, so I thought those components were very realistic to New Mexico, and the author lives in Santa Fe, so I mean, obviously she lives in New Mexico, she's gonna understand that. And so I thought she did a really, really good job with all those components. But like I said, it is a mystery, and the issues I had was Detective Cheese part, his case. When it tied together, it felt a little rushed, and I didn't understand how he came to his conclusions. She didn't fully explain that, and he kind of describes it to his wife and to Lieutenant Leaphorn later on in the book, but it still didn't fully capture how he came to those conclusions. I mean, it helped explain a little bit, but I was still left feeling a little lost. And so that was one of my main issues with the book, was how that all tied together. And then for Detective Manuelito, her case, I thought did a very, very good job. But there's one particular character that was really confusing. And I know he was meant to be, especially in the beginning, but because there's kind of a mystery, the FBI was involved and everything. But how it wraps up in the end also doesn't make sense. And so, like, it kind of ties things together, but it felt a little bit forced in my mind. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, looking at the premise of it, it's like, oh, okay, but I don't know. It just seemed like too big of a coincidence, and it felt forced to me. But overall, I really enjoyed her case in particular. Like I said, the movie area case with Detective Chi was a little bit weird to me. Um, there's something on his case that I'm like, is that really how they handle it? Because to me, they were handling it as if it was a fake, but it's like, shouldn't you make sure though? And so I was a little confused by how that was handled, but this is on Navajo tribal land, and so it's like maybe that is how they handle it. They do have different, customs and rules and such. So I was a little confused by that, but I don't know enough about it. And so it didn't make sense in my mind, but that doesn't mean it doesn't make sense as a whole. And they did follow the channels, which led to more information for them, but I was a little confused by that. But my favorite part of the book as a whole was one particular character that Detective Manuelito's dealing with, and he's an older Navajo gentleman, and he kind of this folklore aspect comes into play and the spirituality aspect comes into play, and I love that. When I was talking about Ember from the Sun, that kind of cultural spiritual aspect, and I thought she did really well capturing that. He's kind of worried about skinwalkers, but he doesn't want to talk about them because of the culture. You don't talk about that because it draws attention, and there's kind of that folklore aspect to it, and I mean, it made the whole book, and I absolutely loved it. And I thought there was just little gems hidden in here, like Detective Cheese helping his clan brother with his new business, and at one point he's reading a John Wayne cookbook, and Detective Chi made a joke like, "Oh, do they have true grits?" And I love that, and I actually had to look up. I was like, "Ooh, is this a real cookbook?" Because I would have to get that for my mom if it was. And unfortunately, it wasn't. There are some John Wayne cookbooks out there, but this particular one wasn't real. But yeah, I don't know. Little gems like that were hidden throughout the whole book. So this is definitely an author I'm planning on reading again. I'm planning on reading the book I have by her father, and if I really enjoyed that one as well, I'm definitely going to go back to the beginning and start at the beginning with these books. But I do see this being a collection I'm going to be building up for sure. And then she has some like nonfiction books about like Santa Fe and such, which I might check out as well. But yeah, I thought she did a really good job of capturing the desert too, especially when she talks about the wind. When I was reading this, the wind was blowing, and there is just something about desert wind and the dust. And like it gets inside your brain. I'm not even kidding. And so yeah, I thought she captured that really well, and just the overall, like I said, culture, the Native American culture, the Navajo lands, and then like I said, the New Mexico culture as well. I thought she did a really good job. So even though I had issues with the book, I still enjoyed it. Like I said, I gave enjoyment 10 out of 10, and I can't wait to read more. So, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Let me know if you've ever read um, Anne Hillerman or Tony Hillerman and your thoughts on the Lee and Chi and Leap Porn series. Um, because I'm really excited to explore more. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.